Hello and welcome to another edition of Agenda 2063 TV show, the only show in Ghana, the region, continent, telling authentic stories about Africa and its integration. But even if we spend a better part of the series talking about different aspects of African Continental Free Trade Area, we will always get back to the mother conversation, which is Agenda 2063. My name is Ike Benson Jr. Happy to be coming your way once again. We're going to take a break in a minute, then we'll zoom in into the two most important segments. We'll be right back. Welcome back from the break and welcome to APRM Watch, the space where we give you developments around the Africa Peer Review Mechanism. And today we're going to give you some updates around a conference that will be held very soon. Now, the conference deals specifically with issues around innovations in agriculture, trade, and investment, and is co-convened through collaborative efforts of the African Peer Review Mechanism, the Center for Global Africa at Delaware State University, with other historically black colleges and universities that educate the majority of African American college students. This conference is poised to be the first global summit on the promotion of agribusiness between the organ of the African Union, the APRM, and its diaspora, the sixth region community, especially in the United States. So one of the key focus areas will be the 5-year strategic plan of Black America's land grants, HBCUs, that is the reference to the historically black colleges and universities, which is titled Bold Transformations 2025, an indispensable investment. Now, BT 2025 articulates the vision, mission, passion, core values, and research priorities of HBCU research scientists and offers the opportunity to engage the African community of scholars toward research excellence in food, agriculture, and environmental sciences to pass on to the next generation. The conference it intends to bring together a series of people all over 150 key stakeholders drawn across a broad spectrum of interests: government officials and representatives, multinational corporations and investors, trade and investment experts, researchers, and leaders in agro-processing industry. The identified stakeholders are drawn across member states of the African Union and the African American host community, and it is happening this very month of November. Check it out on APRM's Twitter feed. Thank you for that. We'll take a break in a minute. We'll be right back with Ear on East Africa. All right, so welcome back from the break and welcome to Ear on East Africa. Asante sana to Beverly Ashen, who has helped contribute to this particular segment. We're going to start off with the elections update in Uganda. Uganda are set to vote on January 14th to elect parliamentary lawmakers and a president. Now, incumbent Museveni is contesting against no less than 10 rivals, including pop star Bobby Wine, who is emerging as the strongest challenger. Now, Wine, 38, has accused the government of using security forces to spoil his campaign by breaking up rallies, beating and detaining supporters. Moments after Wine's nomination on Tuesday, police and military personnel broke the windows of his vehicle to forcibly remove him and take him home in a police van to prevent the opposition candidate from moving with his supporters. One wonders whether he couldn't go home by himself. But that's another question. Museveni is running for election once again. Tanzania, election aftermath. After the October 28th election in Tanzania, opposition politicians were arrested over a planned protest called for by the Tundu Lissu of the Chadema party. Consequently, former MP for Tanzania's Arusha urban constituency, God bless Lema, fled to Kenya over what he termed threats to his life and says he does not want to go back to his motherland. The MP was arrested and spent Sunday night at Kajiado police station in Kajiado County, which is about 80 kilometers south of Kenya's capital, Nairobi, after he was intercepted by Kenyan authorities in Ilbisil along the Namanga Road. He has, however, maintained that he is not a criminal evading justice, but a leader staring at possible assassination due to his political stance. Amnesty International says Nairobi has a legal obligation to host anyone fleeing danger from their countries, and that Mr. Lema's situation means he could be at risk if forcibly returned to his country. Now, Tigray has been in the news, Tigray, Ethiopia, and there's a lot of speculation as to what has happened because the conflict in Tigray, it has pit two heavily armed forces against each other in the heart of the strategic but vulnerable Horn of Africa region. And experts are worrying that neighbors including Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia could be sucked into this conflict. The federal and Tigray governments, who were once allies in Ethiopia's ruling coalition, now regard each other as illegal, which is the result of Abiy's political reforms after taking office in 2008 that left the once dominant TPLF feeling marginalized and targeted. The Tigray leader, in a letter to the AU chair, seen by the Associated Press, has warned that Ethiopian forces are preparing to launch a large-scale offensive. Debretsion Gebremichael also appeared open to talks, saying that the AU was well placed to bring parties to dialogue to avert an all-out civil war. Abiy on Sunday accused the TPLF of trying to undermine his rule and make the country ungovernable by instigating clashes along ethnic and religious lines. He accused the TPLF of a massive military build-up in an attempt at intimidation, and he again took aim at the local election Tigray had in September, calling it illegal. Abiy Ahmed's message rejected any idea that the federal government was equal with criminal groups, again seeming to slam the door on any dialogue with the TPLF. Tigray has also objected to the postponement of national elections until next year because of the COVID pandemic, saying it unnecessarily extends Abiy's rule. So let's keep our eyes focused on the diplomatic capital of Africa, Ethiopia, which is going through some turmoil at the moment. We pray that things go well because Ethiopia has been relatively calm for a while. It's sad that we should be seeing these things. But alas, on to some trade news. Still under this segment, EAC traders are benefiting from training on trade facilitation. At a time that the African Continental Free Trade Area is upon us in 2021, it's good to see that traders from Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi are going to benefit from training on trade facilitation that seeks to boost their knowledge, skills on the World Trade Organization's trade facilitation agreement. Tanzania was picked to be the first country in the bloc to benefit from the training that is undertaken by the International Trade Center in partnership with the East African Business Council and the Tanzania Private Sector Foundation. The workshop that kicked off at Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, has been organized as part of the European Union East African Community Market Access Program, MARCUP. The initiative comes in the wake of trade and movement of people restriction in some East Africa Community member states because of COVID pandemic. It has seen some countries undergoing some strict lockdowns, closure of business that has led to the paralysis of EAC trade. But thankfully, with these new initiatives coming up and an easing of tensions around the COVID, we hope that a lot more things, important things will be seen for developments on trade and the region at large overall. So thank you for this. We hope to speak to you next time with some more exciting and interesting updates. We'll to see that by then we'll be offering you good news and not lots of conflicts all over the place. So thank you for that here on East Africa. And thanks, Beverly Shen, for helping us with that segment. We'll take a break and we'll zoom into the main discussion in just a few minutes. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back from the break. My name is E.K. Benson Jr. I'm happy to be bringing you yet another editorial, especially in the light of the African Continental Free Trade Area, starting in 2021. You see, we make a lot of noise about trading. We have goods, we can trade, blah, blah. But if we cannot move from A to B freely, then trading becomes some way. So that is why we want to have this editorial to begin a series of different interviews over time, which will help provoke people's minds into thinking about, okay, what is this about migration? What is it about freedom of movement that they need to know? So ahead of an Institute of Security Studies and International Organization of Migration webinar on migration versus free trade. We want to shift gears this week into yet another provocative editorial that seeks to open the debate wide open on why what some of us call the AFTA momentum, that is the speed with which AFTA was signed, can be whipped into the AU's freedom of movement protocol, into line at the center of discussions on the AU's discussions on migration. Besides the fact that Africans are largely oblivious to the AU's protocol on free movement, a lot of people don't even know that it exists. Few do know that there's a freedom of movement for East Africa, West Africa, as we see with East Africa Community and ECOWAS. It is against this background that this editorial wants to make an important case that time is up for East and West Africa to join forces to promote and advocate the necessity of free movement. And in fact, I'm happy to report in the course of the editorial that movement has been made on this already officially. East Africa Legislative Assembly and ECOWAS Parliament have actually put in plans in place to help popularize this whole freedom of movement. So that's a good thing, but I'll give you a little bit more detail in the course of the editorial. It is true that regional integration can only happen when there is freedom of movement, goods, capital, and services. The European Union, they started with steel. They did coal and steel community, and then they moved it all along. This was back in 1957. Then they moved it all along before the EU Economic Community and now the European Union. But very few integration initiatives have stood the test of time without a practical application of these core and cardinal tenets of integration, which is freedom of movement. We have it in West Africa. We've had it for 41 years. But what are we waiting for to have it at the continental level? But before we answer that question, let us do a quick overview of the state of ECOWAS and East Africa Community's freedom of movement protocols, for those who may not know. Now, so for ECOWAS freedom of movement, ECOWAS's freedom of movement protocol is 41 years old. It was signed back in 1979. We have had freedom of movement for 41 good years in West Africa. And in order to achieve its mandate of economic integration, the Authority of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS adopted this free movement protocol back in May 1979. 40 years since then, the protocol relating to free movement of persons, the right of residence and establishment, have been very instrumental in fostering regional integration and development. By virtue of this flagship protocol, inter-regional mobility, that is, moving across the different regions, has significantly increased and consequently boosted economic activities in the region. That's why we see a lot of business across by many different ECOWAS community citizens in Ghana. A lot of them come to Ghana, they like Ghana because they know that they can come and do business here and then go back to their respective countries. And how do they do it? There's no visa, so they come, they do their business and they go, and Ghanaians do the same. The free movement protocol has yielded many, many benefits and has also been a major factor to key developments in ECOWAS community. In May 1979, 4 years after the treaty, ECOWAS's own treaty was promulgated or advocated, member states of the community adopted a protocol relating to what was then free movement of persons, residents, and establishments. So 3 different parts of a protocol. It stipulated that, among other things, the right of community citizens to enter, reside, and establish economic activities in the territory of member states could help uplift the region from poverty, and that it could be done in a phased approach to achieve the complete freedom of movement that was envisaged by the treaty. So I'm just going to outline very quickly a few of the different protocols over time that were listed. There's the 1979 protocol relating to free movement of persons, residents, and establishment. Then in 1985, there was a supplementary protocol on the Code of Conduct for the implementation of the protocol on free movement of persons, the right of residence, and establishment. In 86, there was a supplementary protocol on the second phase, that is the right of residence. Then in 1989, there was a supplementary protocol amending and complementing the provisions of Article 7 of the Protocol of Free Movement, Right of Residence and Establishment. Then finally in 1990, a supplementary protocol on the implementation of the third phase, which is the right to establishment. So all you need to know is that in 1979, 3 phases: right to enter, reside, and establish. So you can enter a territory, and then you reside, as in you stay in that territory, and then you set up a business. That's the establishment. And all those three things help form part of what ECOWAS's freedom. But there are challenges, of course. We know that there are challenges at the borders. A lot of people have complained about corruption, both at the French side and at the English side, and so on and so forth. But at least it has been running for 41 years, and we need to make sure that it works well for us, especially now that the Continental Free Trade Area is here. Now let's shift quickly to the East Africa community in East Africa. East Africa communities, it's a little bit different. For them, they have East Africa community freedom of movement enshrined in their article. So they have Article 104, and then, which is part of their treaty. Then they have Articles 5, Article 10, 12, 13, 15, etc. So under Article 104 of the East Africa Communities Treaty, the partner states agreed to adopt measures to achieve free movement of persons, labor and services, and to ensure the enjoyment of the rights of establishment and residence of the people in order to facilitate citizens' enjoyment of their aforementioned rights and freedoms. The partner states therefore concluded that the protocol for establishment of the East Africa Community Common Market will be set up. And so by virtue of Article 151 of the Treaty of East Africa Community, protocols became an integral part of the treaty. The protocol came into force with effect from 1st July 2010, upon ratification by all the partner states. Here is where we go a little specific by talking about migration, because really migration is the most important backdrop of this editorial. It is with the East Africa community, the history, that you're able to understand a little bit about migration, as we do understand the migration in West Africa. So for East Africa, the migration in the context of the protocol is reflected in different provisions of the treaty. So these include Article 5, which provides for the scope of the protocol in the implementation of the common market and strategies for the realization of rights and freedoms of citizens, ease of cross-border movement of persons, and adaptation of integrated border management, removal of restrictions on movement of labor, services, and the right of establishment and residence, as we can see in West Africa. So with Article 9 in East Africa Community Treaty, citizens are expected to use a valid common standard travel document, and partner states who so wish to use machine-readable and electronic national ID cards can do so as travel documents. So Museveni, for example, a couple of years ago, moved from Uganda to Rwanda just with his ID card, and that is one of the beautiful things that East Africa Community offers. There are also the freedom of movement of workers is also catered for under Article 10 of the East Africa Community, where partner states guaranteed free movement of workers who are citizens of other partner states within the territory. So, for example, Kenyans can work within Rwanda, or they can work within Uganda under Article 10, because they're all part of the East Africa Community. So that's what it really means when they talk about, movement of workers from different territories. This article also provides for entitlement of workers in regard to application for employment, free movement in partner states, where they can conclude contracts of employment, and they can also enjoy rights and freedoms of association, just like we can also in West Africa. And Article 11 of the East Africa Community Treaty, partner states undertook to mutually recognize the academic and professional qualifications granted. Now, coming from the Association of African Universities, I'm sure this one is very relevant, of course, because it deals with research and academic community. So this one is very important. Let me read it again. Under Article 11 of East Africa Community, partner states undertook to mutually recognize the academic and professional qualifications granted, experience obtained, requirements met, licenses or certifications granted in other partner states, and harmonization of the educational curricula, examinations, standards, certification, and accreditation of education and training institutions. All this and Article 11 of the EAC Treaty was designed so that it would actualize free movement of labor. West Africa has made some progress on that, but they could do a lot better. I think East Africa Community is a bit more advanced in that respect. Now, in regard to harmonization of labor policies, and for purposes of guaranteeing free movement of labor, Article 12 provides that partner states agreed to harmonization of labor policies, laws, and national laws and programs to enable free movement of labor within the community. In addition, national social security policies, note, social security policies, laws, and systems of partner states are expected to be reviewed and harmonized. So it's still it's still work in progress, but at least they're looking at it to make sure that there's a fully integrated East Africa community. And I think West Africa is also doing that to a large extent. But as these things go, it's work in progress, commitment by member states as well. Furthermore, the protocol under Articles 13 and 16 provide the establishment of nationals of the partner states within their territories and free movement of services supplied by nationals of partner states and the free movement of service suppliers who are nationals of the partner states within the community respectively. So all this basically is just to give you an idea of the progress that the East Africa community has made as far as freedom of movement is concerned, and why it has gone quite far, how ECOWAS has gone quite far, and why this therefore sets the stage for a conversation about these two regions, West and East, coming together to really promote the next thing, which I'm going to talk about, which is the AU Freedom of Movement Protocol. Now, the protocol to the treaty established in the Africa Economic Community relating to free movement of persons, right of residence, and right to establishment, and its implementation roadmap when it enters force will be the key tools that guide the African Union Commission, the regional economic communities, so that is ECOWAS, East Africa Community, SADC, blah, blah, all these ones, and member states of the African Union, all 55. It will guide them, amongst other key stakeholders, in coordinating the implementation of its key programs realized or achieved so far. Article 29 of the Free Movement Protocol of the African Union defines the role of the Commission, that is the African Union Commission, related to evaluate the implementation of the protocol, coordinate and assess the state of free movement of persons in Africa, and collaborate with regional economic communities to harmonize key free movement policy regimes and procedures to ensure that member states adopt and implement necessary legislative immigration procedures, amongst other relevant laws. As provided for in Article 28, the regional economic communities continue to be a vehicle or building blocks through which free movement can be realized, through the innovative initiatives that facilitate free movement of persons, goods, and services at regional and continental levels. So basically, the Freedom of Movement Protocol of the African Union is recognizing that regional economic communities are playing their role in facilitating free movement. Like I said earlier, East Africa is doing it, West Africa is doing it better than South Africa, Central Africa, and so on. It's not to say that the other regions are not doing it, but it's just that these two regions are doing it a lot better. And so, for that reason, the way forward on this conversation would be this, that the free movement of persons, right of residence, and right of establishment within the Secretariat of ECOWAS, together with ECOWAS Parliament, and the Secretariat of the East Africa Community, together with the East African Legislative Assembly, which is the regional parliament legislature, have come together. In fact, last year they came together to accelerate ratification of the Free Movement Protocol and ensure that the protocol comes into force. You see, the AU's Freedom of Movement Protocol just has 4 ratifications right now. And it's not enough. We need more ratification, even though 15 countries are supposed to sign and make it bring it to life, as is usually the case with most AU protocols. 4 signing and ratifying can never be enough. And yet we say we want to trade. How can we trade if we do not want to accept that we need to move freely? So that is, and if we can move freely across the regions, why is it that we do not want to move freely across the continent? These are important questions we need to begin to ask. So we're very happy to be seeing that West Africa and East Africa are coming together through the secretariats and through the parliamentary structures of the region to make sure that something really happens. Now, the reason why these two are happening is quite clear for you by now. These are the 2 regions that have the most progressive free movement regimes on the continent. And lobbying for bilateral arrangements will accelerate support for the protocol, including implementation mechanisms, and encourage progressive policies. There are already commitments or an implementation plan crafted by EALA, that is the East Africa Legislative Assembly, and then ECOWAS parliamentarians that have outlined clearly activities that they will embark on to accelerate the 15 ratifications that will help make the protocol of the AU freedom of movement come to life. And this will be required to enable the protocol on free movement come to force. Now, the parliamentarians from the two regions have already expressed their support to ratifying the protocol in a bid to enhance free movement in the continent, as is already being enjoyed by the two regions. Continuous engagements will be very, very critical between the two regions. And these continuous engagements will be key and imperative in forming regional bilateral agreements to fast-track the free movement regime and in seeking broader ratifications for the protocol with the two regions. So this is some very, very good news that is coming from the AU, that at least the regional economic communities that are doing well are using their best practices to help inform what they can do to make sure that a larger continental framework of the freedom of movement protocol can work. Bearing in mind that after Continental Free Trade Area is coming with full speed, 4 out of 55 can never be enough. We need to do a lot better than that. We need to be using the after momentum to get 20, 25, 30 countries signing and ratifying. The reason why this has not happened is very clear. Security, some countries are afraid that when you open your borders too much, they'll come and take over jobs and so on, forgetting that it is happening at the regional level. So if it is happening at the regional level, why is it at the continental level you must be afraid? So these are things that we need to be thinking through as we go along in the next couple of weeks and months towards the African Continental Free Trade Area. We must begin to think clearly. What is it that we need to do? What is it that we need to have? What conversations do we have in different spaces? To remind people that West Africa, for all our weaknesses and challenges, we have done well. Let us clap for ourselves for our freedom of movement. 41 years is not easy. We being able to move without visas. It's something that the ECOWAS leaders have done well on, and East Africa communities have also done well since 1967. So these two regions have done well, but they must come together and work well to make sure that this freedom of movement protocol happens. Now, in conclusion, all this has come against the backdrop of the African Migration Report I referred to, which is based loosely on one of the International Organization of Migration's flagship reports. This African Migration Report has come at an important time when the AU's freedom of movement protocol continues to become the subject of scrutiny because of its slow signing and ratification by AU member states. Within the context of whatever we may call AFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area governance, the migration conversation is so critical, it's so key, as are narratives that need to be challenged on how African migration really works. In 2015, the hashtag migrant crisis was all over social media. I know because I happened to be on radio and I interviewed some people who spoke to this issue, as well as the Ghana branch of International Organization of Migration, just to find out what which regions were migrating more in Ghana, which ones were leaving. And it turned out that it was in Ghana, at the time it was Brong-Ahafo region that were leaving the shores to go to Italy and all these, much more than all of the other regions. And we wanted to find out why that was happening. Why was it not the Ashanti region or Eastern region or some of these other regions, but Brong-Ahafo? And so they explained all these things and how some of them get stuck in Libya and all these other problems. But in 2015, there was a lot of news, Lampedusa, all these migrants getting stuck from all across. Some of them were Gambians, some were Nigerians, and we're wondering why is it that Nigerians and Ghanaians are getting stuck in, Italy and all these countries, and some of them are being found dead because they want to seek greener pastures. There's nothing wrong with seeking greener pastures, but going through illegal routes and ending up dead is not the best idea. That money that you pay to someone in Libya to take you across the desert, you could have used it in a business, set up yourself, and then later leave the shores to go, and make some money outside. So these are conversations that we really need to think through, because this African Migration Report, what is telling us is that, contrary to what we believed 5 years ago, what was actually really happening was that even though we saw those unfortunate pictures, what has really happened is that more migrants, African migrants, are migrating towards other African countries. So there are a lot more going towards East Africa, Southern Africa, Northern Africa, than actually Europe and the US. So it is not that they are so keen to get out to greener pastures of the continent, outside the continent. They want to go, yeah, sure, no one is stopping them from going outside of their country, but they want to go and see other parts of the continent. And this is one of the important things that is in this maiden edition of the African Migration Report, telling us that what it really says is that as these migrants were going outside to other African countries, it is still all about it being an African affair. It is not that they don't want to go and experience money or experience opportunities outside the continent, but they want to see how it is in other African countries, go and work a little and then come back with a view to, slowly building their businesses, and then if they want to go outside the continent. So that is the real true story that has been hidden. And that is why we can only recommend you to take a look at the African Migration Report, make some time if you can, and see what you can glean from it, what important, outputs or takeaways you can get from it, because now is Africa's time. African Continental Free Trade is just a couple of weeks away. And so this conversation needs to come in and sit right squarely in it so that we can all get the Africa we want. Remember that Agenda 2063 speaks to Aspiration 7, which is seeing the AU as a global player. We believe on this show that the AU is already a global player. We just need to put things into place and make sure that we hold the people who rule the continent, who rule the countries, and who rule the structures more accountable, because it is only by making them accountable that we can get things done properly. So it is in this light that I would say go ahead and find that Africa Migration Report. Go ahead and find that Agenda 2063 booklet. It's downloadable, as is the Africa Migration Report. And just take a look, leaf through, and find out for yourselves how Africans are changing the narrative on moving, and what we also need to do about, freedom of movement. We are making progress, but we can certainly do more. We must be moving more, and we must have fewer challenges to move across the continent, so that when the African Continental Free Trade Area comes to life in 2021, everyone will be much happier, and we can finally get the African we want and tweak it to the way we want it. My name is A.K. Benson Jr. I'm happy to be coming your way frequently to be telling you important and authentic stories about Africa's integration, especially in line with Agenda 2063. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to me, and to watch me, and thank you for the production crew for the great work that they do. Hope to speak to you next time, and hopefully continue the conversation with some very important guests, maybe on Zoom, maybe on phone, who knows, but they'll definitely be on the show to help unpack some of these all-important issues for us. So keep reading your Agenda 2063 and go find that African Migration Report. We'll probably meet you there. Have a great day. We'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.